Her daughter Jessica just got promoted at the law firm, 28 years old and already a senior associate. She paused, letting the comparison hang in the air like the steam from the gravy boat. Isn't that wonderful? Sarah's father, Robert, looked up from his newspaper. He still insisted on reading the physical edition despite Sarah's attempts to introduce him to digital subscriptions. That Henderson girl always was a go-getter, he said, adjusting his reading glasses. Remember when she was valedictorian? Now look at her, making real money, contributing to society. I am contributing to society, Dad, Sarah said quietly, her jaw tightening. She knew where this conversation was heading. They'd had variations of it for the past 5 years. Oh, come on, Robert scoffed, folding his newspaper with unnecessary force. Playing soldier? That's not a career for a woman, Sarah. When are you going to grow up and get a real job? The words stung more than usual tonight. Sarah straightened her shoulders, a habit ingrained from years of military bearing, and set down her fork carefully. I've told you before, the army is my career. I serve my country. Linda laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the room. Serve your country? Sarah, you're 32 years old. You should be serving your family, your own family. Where are my grandchildren? Where's the successful husband? Instead, you're running around playing war games with a bunch of men who probably don't even respect you. Mom, you don't understand. What's there to understand? Robert interrupted, his face reddening. You waste your intelligence on, what, following orders? Marching around? You could have been a doctor, a lawyer, hell, even a teacher would have been better than this military nonsense. Sarah felt the familiar heat rising in her chest, the same feeling she got before a mission when adrenaline started pumping. But this wasn't a combat zone. This was her childhood home, with its faded floral wallpaper and the same china her grandmother had passed down. These were her parents, the people who were supposed to support her. The military isn't nonsense, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. It's discipline, honor, service. It's a waste. Linda slammed her hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. You're wasting your life, Sarah. When I was your age, I had you and your brother. I had a home, a husband who provided for us. What do you have? Some medals? Scars? PTSD? The last accusation hung heavy. Sarah had never told them about the nightmares, about the therapy sessions, about the faces of soldiers she couldn't save. She'd kept all of that locked away, presenting only strength to her family because she knew they'd never understand. At least Jessica Henderson's parents have something to brag about at church, Robert added, returning to his pot roast. What are we supposed to say? Oh, our daughter, she's still in the army. No husband. No kids, just army. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. She'd faced insurgents, survived IED explosions, and led missions in some of the most dangerous places on Earth, but nothing compared to the casual cruelty of her parents' disappointment. You know what the real joke is? Linda continued, apparently not satisfied with the damage already done. Mrs. Patterson asked if you were at least an officer. I had to tell her you were just another grunt. Couldn't even manage that, could you? That's when Sarah almost broke, almost told them everything. About the stars on her shoulders that she'd earned through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. About the soldiers under her command who looked to her for leadership. About the classified operations she'd orchestrated that had saved countless lives. About the president's commendation sitting in a safety deposit box because it contained information that couldn't be public. But she didn't. Because she'd taken an oath. Because operational security meant more than personal vindication. Because a true leader didn't need to announce their rank at the dinner table. I should go, Sarah said instead, standing up slowly. Oh, there she goes again. Robert threw his napkin on the table. Running away when things get tough, just like always. Can't face reality, can you, Sarah? Let her go, Robert, Linda said with a dismissive wave. Maybe one day she'll wake up and realize she's thrown her life away. Maybe when she's 40 and alone, she'll finally understand what we've been trying to tell her. Sarah walked to the closet, retrieving her coat, a simple black pea coat that gave no indication of her military status. Her parents didn't notice the perfect way she folded it over her arm, the practiced efficiency of her movements. They'd never noticed a lot of things. I'm disappointed in you, Sarah, her father called out as she reached the door. We both are. We raised you better than this. She paused at the threshold, rain still hammering against the windows. For a moment, she considered turning around, considered breaking protocol just this once. But then she remembered her duty, her oath, and the mission she had to lead in 72 hours. I'm sorry you feel that way, she said simply, and stepped out into the storm. The rain immediately soaked through her clothes, but Sarah barely noticed. She walked to her car, a modest Honda Civic that drew no attention, and sat there for a moment, letting the tears finally come. Not tears of self-pity, but tears of frustration. Her parents would never know the weight she carried, the lives she was responsible for, the secrets she kept to ensure their safety and freedom. Her phone buzzed. A secure message. Operation Nightfall briefing moved to 0600. Your presence required. Sarah wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders again, and started the car. She had work to do. Real work. Work that mattered, even if the two people who should have been her biggest supporters would never understand. As she drove away from her childhood home, Sarah didn't know that in less than 24 hours, everything would change. She didn't know that a knock on her parents' door would shatter their perception of their disappointment of a daughter. She didn't know that Colonel James Patterson, a man who'd served under her in Afghanistan, would soon stand in that same dining room where she'd just been mocked. But for now, she drove through the rain toward Fort Belvoir, where classified files awaited her review, where soldiers depended on her leadership, and where her real family, the one forged in foxholes and fortified by mutual respect, was preparing for another mission under the command of Brigadier General Sarah Mitchell. The rain continued to fall, washing away the tears, but not the resolve. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tonight, she had work to do. Her parents' laughter still echoed in her ears as she passed through the base's security checkpoint, returning the guards' crisp salute. They'd laughed at her service, dismissed her sacrifice, mocked her choices. They had no idea that their daughter held one of the highest active duty ranks achievable, that she'd been fast-tracked through promotions due to exceptional leadership under fire, that foreign governments knew her name and feared her tactical brilliance. And if Sarah had her way, they'd never know, because that's what real service looked like. Silent, steadfast, and secret when necessary. The irony wasn't lost on her. She protected even those who laughed at her sacrifice. The base lights glowed through the rain as she parked and headed toward the command center. Inside, officers snapped to attention as she entered. "General," they greeted in unison. "As you were," she replied automatically, her mind already shifting from the painful dinner to the operational challenges ahead. There would be time to process her parents' words later. Right now, she had a job to do. And somewhere across town, Linda and Robert Mitchell cleared the dinner table, shaking their heads at their stubborn daughter, completely unaware that they'd just mocked one of the most decorated and respected military leaders of her generation. The storm raged on, but Brigadier General Sarah Mitchell had weathered worse. She always did. Chapter 1 ends here, awaiting OK command to continue with Chapter 2. Tentar Nava Mensch, Gak Editar. Chapter 2, The Unexpected Visitor. The doorbell rang at precisely 1800 hours the following evening. Linda Mitchell wiped her hands on her apron, muttering about solicitors having no respect for dinner time. Robert didn't even look up from his recliner where he was watching the evening news, occasionally grunting his agreement or disgust at various stories. "I'll get it," Linda called out, though Robert hadn't made any move to stand. She opened the door to find a tall man in full military dress uniform standing on her porch. His presence was immediately commanding, silver eagles on his shoulders, rows of ribbons across his chest, and a bearing that seemed to make the very air around him stand at attention. The porch light caught the rain droplets on his cover, making them gleam like small diamonds. "Mrs. Mitchell?" His voice was deep, respectful, but carrying an undertone of urgency. "Yes?" Linda's tone immediately shifted to suspicion. "If this is about Sarah, we've already told her we don't approve of her lifestyle choices." "Ma'am," Colonel Patterson interrupted gently but firmly, "I need to speak with you and your husband immediately. May I come in?" Something in his tone made Linda step aside. As he entered, Robert finally looked up from his television, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. "What's this about?" Robert demanded, not bothering to stand. "If you're here to recruit, you're wasting your time. We don't support the military in this household." Colonel Patterson removed his cover, tucking it under his arm with practiced precision. "Sir, ma'am, I'm Colonel James Patterson. I serve under your daughter's command." "Under her command?" Linda laughed, the same sharp sound from the night before. "I think you're mistaken, Colonel. Our daughter is just a soldier, a grunt, as they say. She doesn't command anyone." Patterson's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "Ma'am, with all due respect, your daughter is Brigadier General Sarah Mitchell. She commands over 3,000 soldiers and is one of the most decorated officers in the United States Army." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Linda gripped the back of a chair, her knuckles white. That's impossible," Robert finally managed. "She would have told us. We would have known." Sit down, please, Patterson said, his tone gentler now. Both of you. Linda moved mechanically to the couch, and Robert, for once, turned off the television. Patterson remained standing, his posture perfect even in their modest living room. General Mitchell has maintained operational security regarding her rank and responsibilities due to the classified nature of her work, he began. However, circumstances have changed, and she's authorized me to brief you on what I can share. Authorized you? Linda's voice was barely a whisper. She authorized you? Yes, ma'am. The general was injured during a classified operation 18 hours ago. She's stable and receiving treatment at Walter Reed, but she'll be there for several weeks. She didn't want you to hear about it through other channels. Robert stood abruptly, his face flushing. Injured? What do you mean injured? And what do you mean, General? Our daughter is 32 years old. Generals they're old men with gray hair and… Your daughter, Patterson interrupted firmly, is the youngest female brigadier general in Army history. She achieved this rank through exceptional leadership, strategic brilliance, and uncommon valor under fire. She's been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, 3 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars, and numerous other commendations, most of which remain classified. Linda's hands shook as she pressed them to her mouth. We just had dinner with her last night. She didn't say anything. She let us… Oh God, we said terrible things. Patterson's expression softened slightly. The general is known for her humility, ma'am. She's never been one to broadcast her achievements. Even on base, she prefers to be judged by her actions rather than her rank. But why? Robert's anger was giving way to confusion and what might have been shame. Why didn't she tell us? We're her parents. Sir, much of what General Mitchell does is classified at the highest levels. She's led operations that have prevented terrorist attacks, saved countless American lives, and protected national security interests across the globe. The nature of her work requires absolute discretion. Patterson reached into his uniform jacket and withdrew a folder. She asked me to give you this. It's what can be legally shared about her service record. With trembling hands, Linda took the folder. As she opened it, photographs spilled out. Sarah in combat gear addressing troops. Sarah receiving medals from high-ranking officials. Sarah in the Situation Room, partially visible figures around her blurred for security. There were redacted mission reports, commendation letters, and a personal note from the Secretary of Defense thanking her for her exceptional leadership during Operation Redacted. This is our daughter? Linda's tears flowed freely now. This is our Sarah? That's General Mitchell in Afghanistan. Patterson pointed to one photo. She personally led a rescue operation to extract a captured intelligence team. She took shrapnel in her shoulder, but refused evacuation until all her people were safe. That's why she has that scar she probably told you was from training. Robert stared at another photo. Sarah standing with what was clearly a foreign dignitary, both figures surrounded by security. Who is that with her? I can't say specifically, sir, but the general has been instrumental in several diplomatic missions. She speaks 4 languages fluently and has prevented at least 2 international incidents through negotiation rather than force. 4 languages? Linda whispered. She never mentioned… We thought she was wasting her intelligence. Your daughter, Patterson said carefully, has 2 master's degrees, one in international relations from Georgetown, and another in strategic studies from the War College. She completed both while on active duty. She's published papers on counterinsurgency tactics that are required reading at West Point, though under a pseudonym for security reasons. Robert sank back into his chair, looking suddenly old. Last night, we compared her to the neighbor's daughter, a lawyer. We said she was playing soldier, that she was wasting her life. How is she? Linda asked suddenly. You said she was injured. How badly? Patterson's jaw tightened slightly. She took fire while extracting a diplomatic convoy from an ambush. The details are classified, but she personally carried the ambassador's wounded aide to safety while coordinating air support. She sustained gunshot wounds to her left leg and ribs. The doctors expect a full recovery, but it will take time. She was shot? Robert's voice broke. Our little girl was shot? Your daughter was doing what she's always done, Patterson said simply, leading from the front, protecting others, serving her country with distinction. Linda clutched the photos to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Can we see her? She's asked that you wait until tomorrow. She's processing some things. The mission didn't go entirely as planned. We lost 2 soldiers, and the general takes every loss personally. She wanted you to have time to absorb this information first. 2 soldiers died under her command? Robert asked quietly. 2 heroes gave their lives following the general's orders to save 15 others, including several civilians, Patterson corrected. Your daughter will carry their names with her forever, as she does with every soldier she's lost. It's what makes her the leader she is." The room fell silent except for Linda's quiet sobs. The weight of their words from the previous night, the years of dismissive comments, the casual cruelty of their disappointment, it all crashed over them like a tide. "We didn't know," Robert said finally, his voice hollow. "How could we not know?" "Because she protected you," Patterson said simply. "From the burden of knowledge, from potential security risks, from the weight of what she carries. It's who she is." He moved toward the door, then paused. "There's one more thing. The general wanted me to tell you something specific." He pulled out a small note card, reading from it. "Tell them I'm not disappointed in them. They loved me the best way they knew how, with the information they had. That's all any parent can do." Linda broke down completely then, collapsing against Robert, who wrapped his arms around her, his own eyes wet. "Visiting hours at Walter Reed start at 0900, Patterson said softly. "I'll have someone pick you up at 0830 if you'd like. Security protocols will need to be followed." "Yes," Robert managed. "Yes, please." Patterson nodded, put his cover back on, and turned to leave. At the door, he paused one final time. "Your daughter is the finest officer I've ever served under," he said. "She's saved more lives than you could imagine, prevented conflicts you'll never hear about, and done it all while carrying the burden of your disapproval. She's a hero, whether you knew it or not, whether she ever told you or not." With that, he stepped out into the night, leaving the Mitchells alone with their shattered assumptions and overwhelming guilt. Linda picked up one of the photos with trembling hands. Sarah, in full dress uniform, her rank insignia clearly visible, standing at attention while receiving another commendation. Even in the formal photo, there was something in her eyes, a strength, a purpose, a weight of responsibility that they'd never bothered to see. "We called her a disappointment," Linda whispered. To her face, we called her a disappointment. Robert pulled her closer, staring at the evidence of their daughter's extraordinary service scattered across their coffee table. "We were the disappointments," he said quietly. "We were the ones who failed." Outside, Colonel Patterson's staff car pulled away, leaving the Mitchell household forever changed. Inside, two parents sat among the fragments of their daughter's secret life, beginning to understand the true cost of service and the depth of their own blindness. Tomorrow they would drive to Walter Reed. Tomorrow they would face their daughter, their general, knowing what they'd said, what they'd believed, what they'd missed. Tonight they sat with their shame and their shock, replaying every dismissive word, every cruel comparison, every moment they'd chosen judgment over understanding. The rain had stopped, but for Robert and Linda Mitchell, the storm was just beginning. The ride to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center felt like the longest journey of their lives. Linda clutched her purse with white knuckles, while Robert stared out the window of the government sedan, watching the familiar Maryland landscape pass by. Neither had slept. They'd spent the night going through photo albums, seeing their daughter's progression through life with new eyes. The determined child, the focused teenager, the young woman whose military bearing they'd dismissed as stubbornness. The driver, a young sergeant, had greeted them with crisp professionalism. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell? I'm Sergeant Williams. I'll be escorting you to see General Mitchell this morning." The way he said their daughter's rank, with unmistakable respect and admiration, made Linda's eyes well up again. At the hospital's security checkpoint, they were given visitor badges and explicit instructions. The gravity of the security measures drove home what Colonel Patterson had told them. This wasn't just about visiting their injured daughter. This was about entering a world they'd never known existed, one where Sarah was clearly a significant figure. "The general is in the secure wing," Sergeant Williams explained as he led them through corridors bustling with military medical personnel. "She's been asking about you both since she woke up." "Asking about us?" Robert's voice was rough. "After what we said to her?" The sergeant glanced back, his expression carefully neutral. "The general speaks highly of you both, sir. She always has." That only made it worse. They were led through several security doors, each requiring badge scans and verification. Finally, they stopped outside a room where two soldiers stood guard. The soldiers snapped to attention as they approached. "The general's parents," Sergeant Williams announced. "Yes, Sergeant. The general is awake and expecting them." One of the guards opened the door. Linda's first thought when she saw her daughter was how small she looked in the hospital bed. Sarah's left leg was elevated and immobilized, her torso wrapped in bandages visible above the hospital gown. Monitors beeped steadily, and an IV dripped fluids into her arm, but it was her face that made Linda gasp. Bruised along one side, a cut across her forehead held together with surgical strips. Sarah's eyes opened at the sound, and despite everything, She smiled. Hi, Mom. Dad. Linda rushed forward, then stopped abruptly, afraid to touch her injured child. Sarah. Oh, sweetheart. It's okay, Mom. I'm okay. Sarah's voice was hoarse but steady. She lifted her right hand slightly, and Linda grasped it gently. Robert moved to the other side of the bed, his face a mask of controlled emotion. Sarah, Colonel Patterson told us. I know, Sarah said softly. I asked him to. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. You're sorry? Linda's voice broke. Sarah, we said horrible things. We called you a disappointment. We laughed at your service. Mom, stop. Sarah's grip tightened slightly. You didn't know. I made sure you didn't know. But why? Robert's composure finally cracked. Why didn't you tell us? We're your parents. We had a right to know our daughter is a general, for God's sake. Sarah was quiet for a moment, her eyes moving to the window where morning light filtered through. Do you remember when I was 8, and Tommy Chen's dad came to school in his Marine uniform for Veterans Day? Her parents exchanged confused glances but nodded. I came home that day and told you I wanted to be a soldier. Do you remember what you said? Linda's face paled. She remembered. I said that's not what girls do, that you should focus on more appropriate dreams. And Dad said the military was for people who couldn't make it in the real world, Sarah continued, her tone gentle without accusation. Every time I brought it up over the years, you both made it clear how you felt. So when I enlisted after college, I knew you'd never approve. When I got my commission, when I made captain, major, lieutenant colonel, each promotion came with more responsibility, more secrets, more reasons I couldn't share. We drove you away, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. Our own prejudice drove you to hide your life from us. Sarah shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. You didn't drive me away. We just lived in different worlds. You wanted a daughter who'd give you grandchildren and have a normal job. I wanted to serve my country. Neither of us was wrong. We just wanted different things. But you let us mock you, Linda protested. Last night we said such cruel things, and you just sat there. What should I have done, Mom? Thrown my rank in your face? Said actually I'm a general? That's not who I am. That's not how I was trained. Leaders don't need to announce their position to have authority. A knock on the door interrupted them. A doctor entered, followed by a man in a suit who was clearly security. General Mitchell, I apologize for the interruption. We need to do a quick assessment. The doctor's tone was professionally warm but deferential. Of course, Dr. Chen. Sarah looked at her parents. This is my mother and father. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell. The doctor nodded. Your daughter is recovering remarkably well. She's a fighter. As the doctor conducted his examination, asking Sarah to rate her pain and checking her responses, Linda watched with new eyes. Even injured, even in pain, Sarah maintained a composure and dignity that commanded respect. The medical staff, the guards, everyone who entered the room treated her not just as a patient, but as someone of significant importance. When the doctor left, promising to return in an hour, Robert finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. What happened, Sarah? How are you injured? Sarah's expression grew distant. I can't tell you everything. Most of it's classified, but we were extracting diplomatic personnel from a deteriorating situation. Bad intelligence led us into an ambush. I made the call to push through rather than retreat, because falling back would have meant abandoning the civilians. The colonel said you carried someone to safety, Linda prompted gently. The ambassador's aide, she's 23, just out of college, reminded me of myself at that age, eager to change the world. Sarah's voice grew softer. She took shrapnel meant for the ambassador. I couldn't leave her. While you were already shot? Robert's voice was strained. The leg wound came first. The ribs were from carrying her. Caught a ricochet. Sarah said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. She's alive, though. They all are, except the 2 soldiers, Linda finished. Colonel Patterson told us. Sarah's composure finally cracked slightly. Specialist Marcus Thompson and Sergeant First Class Diana Chen. Thompson was 22, had a baby daughter. Chen was on her last deployment before retirement, 38 years old. She'd served under me for 6 years. Sarah. Robert reached out tentatively, placing his hand over hers. I write letters to their families, Sarah continued, her voice steady but her eyes bright with unshed tears. Every soldier I lose gets a personal letter. Not the form letter, but something real. Something that tells their family who they were to us, what they meant. I've written 47 letters over my career. I remember every name. The weight of command, the burden their daughter carried, settled over the room like a heavy blanket. This wasn't the playing soldier they'd mocked. This was life and death, responsibility and sacrifice on a scale they'd never imagined. How do you bear it? Linda asked quietly. Sarah looked at her mother directly. Because someone has to. Because those soldiers trust me to make the hard calls. Because sometimes the difference between a diplomatic solution and a war comes down to being willing to risk everything for peace. She paused. Because I'd rather carry this weight than ask someone else to. Robert cleared his throat. The neighbor's daughter, Jessica Henderson, we compared you to her last night. Said she was successful, contributing to society. Jessica's doing important work, Sarah interrupted. The world needs good lawyers. Stop it, Robert said firmly. Stop being gracious about this. We belittled your service. We mocked your sacrifice. We have no right to your forgiveness. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what I thought about during the firefight? When I was pinned down, trying to coordinate air support while stemming the bleeding in my leg? Her parents shook their heads. I thought about Sunday dinners when I was little. How you'd always make pot roast when I came home from college. How Dad would save the sports section for me even though I never read it, just because he wanted to share something. How Mom would iron my uniforms before I learned to do it myself, complaining the whole time but making sure every crease was perfect. Linda's tears flowed freely now. I thought about how you drove 6 hours to my basic training graduation, even though you disagreed with my choice. How you've sent care packages to whatever base I was on, even when we weren't speaking much. How you've loved me the only way you knew how, even when you didn't understand my choices. That's not enough, Robert protested. We should have done better. We should have seen you. You saw me, Sarah said softly. You just saw the daughter you wanted me to be, not the soldier I became. And maybe I should have tried harder to bridge that gap. Maybe I should have trusted you with more of my truth. A soft knock interrupted them again. This time, it was Sergeant Williams. General, I apologize, but you have a visitor. He says it's urgent. Sarah nodded. Send him in. The man who entered was clearly military despite his civilian clothes. He carried himself with the same bearing Sarah did, and Linda noticed the subtle deference in his posture. General Mitchell, he said, then paused, glancing at her parents. It's fine, Colonel Reeves. These are my parents. Sarah made the introduction smoothly. Mom, Dad, this is Colonel Michael Reeves. He commands the unit that will be taking over my operational responsibilities while I recover. Ma'am, Reeves nodded to them before turning back to Sarah. I need your input on the situation in Sector 7. Intelligence suggests... Not here, Sarah interrupted gently. Give me 20 minutes with my parents, then we'll use the secure room. Of course, General. I'll wait outside. After he left, Robert stared at his daughter. You're coordinating military operations from your hospital bed? The job doesn't stop because I'm injured, Dad. My people need... No, Linda interrupted, standing suddenly. No, Sarah. Your people can wait 20 minutes. We're here. We're your parents, and we just discovered we've been blind to who you are for over a decade. The job can wait. Sarah blinked, surprised by her mother's vehemence. Linda continued, her voice stronger now. I've watched you put everyone else first your entire life. Even as a child, you were taking care of others. And we took advantage of that. We let you sacrifice yourself for this family, for your country, for everyone but yourself. When do you get to just be Sarah? When do you get to be our daughter who's hurt and scared and needs her parents? The room was silent except for the steady beep of monitors. Then, for the first time since they'd arrived, Sarah's military bearing crumbled. Her shoulders shook as tears finally came. I was so scared, she admitted, her voice small. When Thompson went down, when I saw Chen take that hit, when I realized we were outnumbered 3-1, I was terrified I'd failed them. Linda moved quickly, carefully gathering her daughter into her arms, mindful of the injuries. Oh, sweetheart. I wanted to call you, Sarah continued through her tears. When they were prepping me for surgery, I wanted to call and tell you everything. Tell you I loved you. Tell you I was sorry for all the secrets. But I couldn't. The mission. Shh. Robert moved closer, his hand on Sarah's shoulder. We're here now. We're here. They stayed like that for long minutes, a family reconnecting across years of misunderstanding and secrets. Finally, Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes with her good hand.